My name is Janice, for those of you that don't know, and I'm with Growing Light Wellness and Yoga. That's my yoga teaching name. And today we're going to be exploring child's pose. So I called this class Yoga for Your Body and Exploration of Child's Pose. So the goal here is to help you find your comfortable resting position. Child's pose is almost universally thought of as a resting pose. I mean, how often have you heard in a yoga class, if this is too difficult or if you need to take a rest, you can go into child's pose. Child's pose is always there for you. You can always go to child's pose. But for some people, child's pose is not a comfortable place to rest. People may have issues with the knees or the shoulders, or they may be, have a body shape, either, large in the chest, or maybe a little rounder in the belly that prevents them from resting comfortably in child's pose. So today we're going to cover some variations and modifications that will address some of those barriers, I hope, and help you find a child's pose that works for you, or something that's similar to child's pose and accomplishes the same goal of resting that you can get in and out of during a class. And there's no ideal pose. There's only the way that the pose feels best in your body. So that's what I really want you, or I would like you to work towards, and it's what I'm always working towards as well. A couple of safety things. If you have severe knee issues, swelling in the knees, or like a previous fracture, something that you're under the care of an orthopedic for right now, you may just want to watch this and not do all the poses and kind of move through them a little bit slower and figure out what feels okay in your body, or maybe even talk to your doctor about it. Another way to help with some of that is if you have a second yoga mat, which I know some people do. If you don't, you may want to think about investing in an inexpensive one. I know they have them at like TJ Maxx and Marshalls and stuff pretty inexpensively. You can put that out on top of your mat, like, the long ways, covering the whole thing. Or you can fold it and use it as an awesome cushion for your knees or under the low back or wherever you need it. So this is like my older mat that I use, for my outside classes a lot of times, but man, it comes in handy when I just need a little bit of extra cushioning. So that's one option, and a pretty inexpensive option. The props that you're going to want for today's class are 2 blocks or more. If you don't have blocks, we're not doing anything super intense with them. So you could use books or maybe even like a shoebox or something, because for the most part we're just using them to rest our heads, or even full rolls of toilet paper, which are kind of the right height, and if the roll is like full, it has pretty good support there for what we're using it for. You're also going to want either a bolster or a couple of pillows. Another option would be to fold up some blankets and put them in a pillowcase, or fold up some towels and put them in a pillowcase. This is what I used a lot before I had a bolster, and sometimes I still use, because as you can see I have a round bolster, and sometimes the round bolster is a little unsteady. So this is actually just one of those body pillows that you can pick up for $10 or $15. I folded it in half and kind of shoved it in this pillowcase, and that works great as a bolster. You're also going to want at least 2 blankets depending on your needs. You may need more than that if you need a lot of cushioning. Remember, you can always kind of fold the yoga mat over too if you need to. And we're going to be moving pretty slowly through this class, so you'll have time to make those modifications that you need to adjust your props as you need to, and to find the position that works for you. Let's talk, you'll also need a chair. So that's another thing that will come in handy during this practice, because one of the variations specifically that we'll be going over does use the chair, and I actually have 2 chairs because I'm going to show you another variation at the end that you can also use, especially if you have something like a problem with your spine or osteoporosis, where a deep back bend really is not the best thing for you. So we'll go over some modifications for that too. If you are using a chair, for safety, there's a couple of things you can do because, as you know, chairs can slide. This one has some pretty good padding on the bottom, so it doesn't really slide much. And what I do is I kind of bring it, it's a little heavier, but if you're using a folding chair, you know, this may not be ideal. I bring it and put it like on the end of my mat. So you can see I can push on it and it's not really going to move too much. You could also move your mat so that you're able to practice where your chair is against a wall. And that way you're not going to have that sliding around and that instability. So stability is really important when you're using the chair, and also your distance from the chair so that if you're in a pose where you're leaning forward, you're not going to bang your head or miss the chair or anything like that. And I think using a chair to support your poses does take a little getting used to. So if it doesn't feel great today, just play with it a little bit in your own practice, you know, maybe moving through these poses, holding them a little bit longer, trying to figure out if there's a position that you can get in that can work for you. So just a little bit more talking and then we'll get started. I want to talk to you about your blankets. So I have, my blankets are 2 different sizes, but that's okay. They could be the same size. This blanket, I've folded in half, like long ways. Think about like a hot dog bun. So if your blanket is like this, you're gonna fold it like a hot dog bun. And I left it folded like that because it took me a long time to get it like this. I didn't want to take up your time. And then you're gonna fold it this way like a hamburger bun. So now you've got kind of a smaller rectangle, or depending on the shape of your blanket, it may be a little bit more like a square. And then what I like to do here, because you could just fold this again and you'd have some pretty great padding there. And if you feel like most of the padding that you need is at your knees, that's fine. What I personally like to do is fold this top part in like this, or maybe even twice, and then give the back a little bit of a fold too, so that when I'm in a kneeling position or child's pose, this will support my ankles and the top of my foot, and then my toes will just kind of touch the mat. So I find that to be really supportive. You can leave it just like this for now. We're going to move through some spinal mobility first before our first child's pose, and then you can figure out what works for you. My other blanket, which is this really cool Grateful Dead blanket that my brother gave me for Christmas, I fold it in half, and then you can do 2 things here. Well, you can do a lot of things here, but the 2 things that I usually do are you can roll it. So it's the shape is a little bit more rounded. When you get to the end, you may have a little bit more height there. Or I usually will just fold like this, because I find that to be a little bit more comfortable for myself. This blanket is going to go between your thighs and your calves, so right in here when you're in child's pose. So whatever is going to be more comfortable for you, and you can always change your mind, you can always adjust it. Maybe next time you do this practice, you fold things a little bit differently, and just see what works best for you. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to start in a comfortable seat. So whatever that means for you, you do not have to be cross-legged. You can have your legs out in front of you. Maybe you have your feet on the floor. Just rest your hands on your knees. Roll your shoulders up, back, and down. Maybe you allow the eyes to close for a moment as you just settle in on your mat and prepare for this practice that I hope will foster a deep sense of rest. Feel the breath inflate your belly. The belly rises, the chest rises. And then exhale, feel yourself soften and empty out. Good. Inhale the arms up over your head. Exhale, palms together, hands to heart center. Just take a moment to touch in to your heart. Child's pose is a forward fold. And forward folds are all about going inside. You can release the hands, and we'll start with some spinal rotation. Because we're going to be doing so much forward folding, we want to balance that out a little bit. So as you inhale, move the chest forward. Exhale, arching the back like you're stirring a big pot or a big bowl of something good. remember that if you guys have questions, you can type them in the comments. I do have my computer open, so hopefully I'll be able to see them. On your next inhale, change direction. Great. Moving with the breath. Feeling that arch forward of the chest and then the rounding of the back. So you're getting just a little back bend in here. And then we'll come back to center. Inhale the arms up overhead. Exhale, palms together, hands to heart center. Now I'm going to turn so that I'm long ways on my mat because we're going to move on to our back. So make sure that your chair is not in your way. And we'll try to roll one vertebra at a time down onto our backs. You can use your arms for support. And we'll move into our first variation of child's pose. So that variation is bringing the knees into the chest. And maybe you give yourself a little rock side to side. And maybe you roll here over the hips. See if you can bring your big toes together like you would in your child's pose and your knees wide apart. So in this variation, you still get that nice stretch through the hips and the groin and the low back. You still get that restful position without all the pressure on your knees. So if you have a lot of issues with your knees and a lot of pain anytime you put pressure on the knees, this variation is great. You don't get as much stretch through the shoulders, but you know, in some variations on our knees we don't either. So you just find what's comfortable for you. Take a moment here in stillness. Inhale, feel the chest expand, feel the belly expand. Feel the back of your body expand and press into the stability of the mat. And exhale, release, soften, empty. A couple more of those. And you can position the knees however you need to for comfort. Which is another benefit of this variation, that it's pretty easy to make adjustments. You can also hold behind the thighs here, or you could even use your block or your bolster and set your feet down on that. Feel the rise and fall of your belly and your chest and the contact with your back and the mat. Nice and supported here. On your next inhale, bring the arms out nice and wide. I know we've got a lot of props today, so you may have to kind of slide some things out of the way. And as you exhale, drop your knees to the right. You can use your bolster, your pillows, your blankets, your block underneath that knee if you want that extra support. Gaze can be at the ceiling, over to the left, or in the same direction as your knees to make this a bit more restorative. Inhale, knees come back to center. Give yourself a little hug in here. Arms come wide, and then on the next exhale, drop your knees over to the left. Right there. And again, you can use whatever support you'd like underneath that knee. You can let the knee go to the floor. You can take your left hand, place it on top of the right knee to deepen that hip stretch if you'd like. The knees back to center, rock a little bit here, make some circles with the low back, and then we'll move over to the right side and kind of curl up into that fetal position, resting our head on our right arm, taking a few breaths here, and then slowly pushing ourselves back up to a seat. We'll turn back to the front of our mats. And you can either cross your ankles and roll over the ankles, or you can swing the legs to the side. Coming into tabletop, we're not going to be here very long. We're going to slide down onto our bellies here. Good. Bring the hands underneath the shoulders, and as you inhale, pulling the elbows and shoulders towards each other, lifting the chest for your cobra pose. Head is a neutral spine, which means you're looking just a few inches in front of you. And exhale, release. Turn the head to one side. Inhale, rise. Feet stay grounded on the mat. Exhale, lower. Head turns to the other side. Inhale, rise. Exhale, lower. Make a little pillow with your hands and rest your head on top of your hands. So again, even this is not an easy pose for everyone and may not be appropriate for people, especially in pregnancy, or if you've had abdominal surgery recently, things like that. But this is another option for a resting pose. Let's bring the hands in under our shoulders and start to walk ourselves back up through that tabletop. And we'll find our props here. So we're going to find our blanket, and again, going with whatever fold works for you. I'm going to take my folded blanket, fold in that front section, fold in the back section a little bit, and bring it onto my mat so I can get my knees up on there. So my knees are on that front part, and my ankles are a little bit supported by the back of the blanket there. I take my other rolled or folded blanket, place it in between my thighs and my calves. So you'll feel that that takes a little bit of pressure off the knees. I find that just padding the knees is not really enough because we're still putting a lot of pressure on them. But once we get that little bit of space in there, it does help a little bit with the compression. You can also, if you have a lot of issues with compression in the knees, take a block. Start on the lowest height and slip it in between the feet, kind of so it goes under your butt. Your feet are going to be a little wider apart, but that's okay. See if you can press your heels against the sides of that block if you're using it. If not, you can keep your big toes together. Start to reach your way forward towards the mat. Take your block on the low or medium height. Reach your chest forward. Arms come forward. Keep the elbows bent here. Head comes down onto the block. If you have sensitive shoulders, keep the elbows bent. Don't reach miles ahead of you. You can also bend the arms and interlace the fingers, resting them on the back of the head while your head is supported on the block. So now we're in a more traditional version of child's pose. Feel the breath expand the back of your body, the front of your body. Feel your side ribs open and expand. Feel your head supported on the block with no effort in the neck. Feel the arms and the shoulders just surrender to gravity. You can use any or all of these modifications. So say you only need the knees padded, that's fine. Or you only need the block under your forehead, you can just do that. You don't need to do all of these, but I want to show you some modifications, again, that will make this pose a more peaceful resting place for you. So we'll take a couple more breaths here. If you're uncomfortable, you can come out of this at any time. You can lie on your belly, you can curl into the fetal position, you can lie on your back in that first modification that we explored, just the knees to chest. Start to walk your way back up. And let's move back into a seat here. So we're going to cross our ankles. You can either swing the legs to the side and then in front, or cross the ankles and sit back into a seat. Now, again, remember that in our seated positions, we can also use these props to prop our hips up a little bit. Give ourselves a little more height here, and that can help with comfort as well. So we're going to start using the chair a little bit. So I want you to bring that chair onto the edge of your mat or against the wall or whatever you're doing for safety, like we talked about in the beginning. And we're first going to bring our legs wide. So you're going to bring your legs wide and get as close to the chair as you need to, because we're going to be resting our head on it. And if you want, you can keep that blanket underneath your butt. So legs are nice and wide. Inhale the arms up overhead. Exhale, hands come onto the chair, making a little pillow for your forehead. You can also use your block here if the chair feels too far away. The dogs are snubbing us today. Peanut's in bed and Ivy's just kind of doing her thing. So feel that stretch through the legs, reaching forward with the chest, reaching long through the crown of the head. Trying to keep the back nice and long here. Inhale, walk your way back up. Bring one leg in and then the other. Bring the soles of the feet together. You noticed, I'm sure, that in that child's pose, there can also be a lot of pressure on the ankles and the tops of the feet, so we want to take care of those as well. So maybe giving yourself a little foot massage here, rubbing into the soles of the feet and the tops of the feet, just releasing any tension that might have built up there during our poses. And then you can lift the chest, maybe using the arms to push the knees down slightly, and start to come forward onto that chair. You can make that pillow with your hands. You can use the block and just allow your back here to start to round a little bit. If you're having discomfort here, remember that you can always, oh, I have a block is way back here. You can always use your blocks or your pillows or blankets underneath the thighs or the knees to make this more restorative. And this is another shape that really resembles that child's pose shape. So again, you find what works for you for your resting pose. We'll inhale, coming back up. Slide the chair back a little bit so it's not in our way. You can leave the blanket where it is, actually, if you'd like to, or you can slide it out of the way if you're sitting on one. You may not even have one there. And then we're going to come back down onto our backs, one vertebra at a time. Bring the knees into the chest. Give yourself a little rock back and forth. Bring a little movement back into the legs. So maybe pedaling the legs here, making some circles with the hips. Let's plant the feet onto the mat. Make sure your block is nearby as we move into supported bridge. Okay, so we'll do a couple of flowing bridge, and then the last one we'll move that block underneath our hips. So inhale, pressing into the hands, pressing into the feet, lifting the hips toward the sky. At least a fist width distance between the chin and the chest, so don't overly tuck your chin. Allow your throat to be open so the breath can reach your belly and your chest. Exhale, lowering down one vertebra at a time. As you inhale, feel like that inhale is coming from your sacrum, from the very base of your spine, all the way up. And then exhale, lower. And then on this one, we'll inhale, lifting the hips, sliding the block underneath us on the low, or maybe the medium height if you're feeling it today. I'm going to go with the low height myself. Right under that lowest part of the low back, your sacrum, which is that triangular bone at the bottom of our back. Palms can be down, or you can turn the palms up here. And just take a moment in this resting pose. You can also bring the hands to the belly if you'd like. And feel the opening through your chest, through your collarbones, through your belly, your hips. Kind of making this uninterrupted channel for the breath. feel the support of the block in the ground under your feet and under your shoulders. And instead of feeling like you're pressing into the ground, feel as though the ground and the props are rising to meet you. So instead of feeling as though you're moving downward or falling, feel as though those props and the ground are helping you to rise. So the more rooted you are, the more grounded you are, the more you can rise. Inhale, lifting the hips, moving that block away, and then exhale, lowering down one vertebra at a time. So windshield wiper the legs a little bit, so just moving the knees from one side to the other, maybe moving your gaze in the opposite direction, just bringing a little movement back into the body. Knees come into the chest, and you can either roll to your side and sit up as we've been doing, or you can bring a little momentum in it and, maybe grab behind your thighs and rock from tail to brainstem, finally reaching that seated position. Now we'll move into our third variation of the child's pose, for which we'll use the chair, okay? So we're going to move the chair back onto the mat. We're going to get our blanket positioned where we want it. So I've got my front fold for my knees and my back fold for my ankles. I've got my fin fold for in between my thighs and my calves. And we have a couple of options here. So the first option for using the chair is you're going to come forward like we did in our other supported chair poses. So you can stay here. Remember, you can always use that block underneath your butt too if you need to take a little pressure off the knees. Another variation that I really like is you can take your pillow or your bolster if you have one. You may need to bring the knees a little wider here. If you have another block, you can set it behind that to support the bolster a little bit. So the bolster is going to be about a 45-degree angle between the ground and the chair. And then you're going to come forward, bring your arms around the bolster, resting your head. You can turn your cheek to one side and breathing here. I find this to be a really soothing variation. You may have to experiment a little bit with how far away from you the chair is. Again, you've got this block here, so if your knees are uncomfortable but you still want to experience this pose, you can bring that block under your butt and it'll help take some pressure off the knees. You can also just move into a cross-legged seat and experience the same pose, or the wide legs, whatever works for you. Feel your breath move down the body, expanding the belly. Your belly may be moved against the bolster, supported. And exhale, emptying out. If you have your face turned to one side, use your hands, lift yourself off the bolster, and turn your face to the other side, moving back into that supported child's pose here. Feeling that length through your spine. You get a little opening through the shoulders here as you bring your arms around the bolster. Just allowing the body to release and rest and relax. This is one of those poses that you can kind of add into your routine, maybe after work or just before bed. Finding a little support here. use our hands to push ourselves back up to a seat. Move that bolster off to the side and find our way back to a seated position. Let's leave the chair. No, we'll move the chair. Find ourselves in that seat, whether it's cross-legged or legs out straight. Inhaling the arms up overhead. Exhale, palms together, hands to heart center. We'll do a little arm flow here. Inhale the arms wide, fingers pointing up toward the sky, elbows and shoulders moving towards the spine. Exhale, hands together to heart center. Inhale, arms come up overhead. Exhale, folding forward. Just to your comfort. Inhale, walking the hands back up. Exhale, hands to knees. Let's do that one more time. Inhale, arms overhead. Exhale, palms together, hands to heart center. Inhale, arms come out nice and wide. Maybe you lift the head a little bit. You feel that slight back bend coming from the upper back. Chest moving toward the sky. Exhale, palms together, hands to heart center. Inhale, arms come up overhead. Exhale, bowing forward. Inhale, rounding the back, hands coming back in. Exhale, hands to knees. Great. We'll move through just a couple of twists, and then we'll move into our last restorative child's pose variation. Inhale, the arms up overhead. Exhale, turning to your right. Right hand comes behind. Left hand comes to the top of the right knee. Inhale to lengthen the spine, lengthening up through the crown of the head. Exhale, twisting a little bit deeper. With each inhale, you're lengthening, feeling as though you're growing taller. And with each exhale, twisting just a little bit deeper. One more last inhale and exhale here. One last little squeeze. Inhale back to center. Exhale, hands to the knees. Inhale, arms come up overhead. Exhale, we'll move that twist to the left. So left hand comes just behind you. Right hand to the top of the left knee. Inhale to lengthen. Exhale to twist. Maybe looking over that back shoulder if that's available to you. With each inhale, lengthening through the crown of the head, and with each exhale, surrendering into that twist, bringing out that upper body. One last inhale here, lengthening. Exhale, one last little squeeze. Inhale back to center. Exhale, palms to the knees. Great. So now we'll move back through that tabletop, bringing our props back. Finding our way into this last variation of child's pose. And again, this is just giving you options. You can see what you like the best, what works the best in your body. So you're propped up here, maybe the legs come a little wider, and we're going to use the bolster here. So bolster comes in between the knees. You can prop it up with your blocks if you'd like to. That'll give you a little bit more height. You can go whatever height you'd like. So if you want to go nice and high on the bolster, your blocks are going to be like the medium and the high height. You want to go a little lower, like just to elevate it a little bit, you can put your blocks on the lowest height. Wherever you are, if you're using the blocks, leave enough space to bring your arms in between them so the arms are underneath the bolster. If you're not using the blocks, you're going to bring your arms around the bolster like you're giving it a nice big squeeze here. So elbows and forearms kind of pressing into the bolster. Maybe you interlace your fingers, or you can just bring your elbows kind of more towards your knees and the hands to the sides of the bolster. You're pretty supported here, so if you want to try child's pose with the arms behind you, this might be a good time to do so. I think a lot of us have trouble with balance in this variation, but when you've got that bolster under you, you're golden. So give it a try. And just feel yourself again completely supported, completely at ease. Feel the props rising up to meet you. You're allowing yourself to rest here. Supported, rooted, grounded. If you have your head turned to one side, inhale, pressing into the ground with your hands, lifting the body, turning the head to the other side, and then allowing yourself to relax back into the child's pose. Couple more breaths here. And then start to walk your way back up. We'll move into Shavasana. Just a couple of minutes to kind of let all this integrate into our bodies. So you can either go down onto your back for a traditional Shavasana. You've got all these beautiful props here. So you can use the bolster or blankets under your knees to take some pressure off your low back. You can lay on your side if you'd like to and support your arm on top of your bolster. Or you can even, if you want to today, take a belly down Shavasana. So maybe taking that blanket that you had in between your thighs and maybe even your other blanket and placing it here so it's going to be under your hip bones. And then just lowering yourself down, making a little pillow with your hands. Or using one blanket under your hips and one blanket under your head. And just putting the arms wherever they're comfortable. Again, you don't have to take this variation, but if you have never taken a belly down Shavasana, it might be a good time to do that. You can also take a more traditional on your back, no props, or again, bolster blanket under your knees. Arms out nice and wide. Feet turning out to the sides. Allow the eyes to close. And breathe. Feel the rise and fall of your belly. And your breath. That openness from the practice that we've cultivated today. Just take a moment here to rest and release and relax. I want to share a poem with you called How the Light Comes. So just take a moment. It's by Jan Richardson. And I'll read this to you as you relax here in Shavasana. I cannot tell you how the light comes. What I know is that it is more ancient than imagining, that it travels across an astounding expanse to reach us, that it loves searching out what is hidden, what is lost, what is forgotten, or in peril, or in pain, that it has a fondness for the body, for finding its way toward flesh, for tracing the edges of form, for shining forth through the eye, the hand, the heart. I cannot tell you how the light comes, but that it does, that it will, that it works its way into the deepest dark that enfolds you. though it may seem long ages in coming or arrive in a shape you did not foresee. And so, may we this day turn ourselves toward it. May we lift our faces to let it find us. May we bend our bodies to follow the arc it makes. May we open and open more and open still to the blessed light that comes. Take one more moment here to open yourself to that light. And maybe you start to bring that movement back into your body, wiggling your fingers and toes, bending the knees, maybe giving yourself a little windshield wiper of the legs here like we did earlier. Maybe you reach long overhead, reaching the arms and legs away from each other. And when you're ready, turn over onto your side, whatever side feels good to you. And just take a moment here, curled into that fetal position, cultivating all that rest and peace that we worked with today. And start to push yourself up back to that seat. You can keep the eyes closed if you'd like, or you can open them. Inhale here as you find your way into your seat, and exhale. Let's inhale, bringing the arms overhead. Exhale, palms together, hands to heart center. I want to thank you for joining me today. It's an act of courage to find ways to work with your body, make peace with your body, and find a place to rest. So important for us to have that. So I hope that you found something today that you can take off the mat and into the rest of your life, even if it was just making that time and space for yourself. So inhale, thumbs to the forehead, maybe giving yourself a little massage here. And as you exhale, releasing the hands to seal your practice. Thank you, everybody. I hope that you found that helpful. And that you'll use some of those variations in your practice. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear your feedback on this. I've never really done anything like this before, so I'd love to hear what you thought. So you can leave a comment, send me a private message. I will post a link on YouTube later, so you'll be able to review this practice whenever you'd like to. And again, I'd love to hear your feedback. So I hope you have a great day, and I hope you've had a beautiful rest with me today. Take care.